Hola y bienvenidos al podcast del presente del subjuntivo. Welcome, I'm Senora Stanius. This is podcast 3.3. I'm going to be discussing the present subjunctive in Spanish. Metas de aprendizaje. Students will learn the present subjunctive of regular verbs, of stem-changing verbs, and which verbs are irregular in the present subjunctive in Spanish. Students will also learn some of the general uses of the subjunctive in Spanish. ¿Qué significa el subjuntivo? We have to first know that the subjunctive is not a tense. It is a mood. And what does that mean? The subjunctive reflects the speaker's attitude or feelings about the action or event, or it states the speaker's views as uncertain or hypothetical. So there has to be that degree of uncertainty or subjective opinion in order to be able to use the subjunctive in Spanish. We have been using the indicative up until now. The indicative mood is used to state facts and express actions or states that the speaker considers to be real and definite. And that's how it is different from the indicative mood. ¿Cuándo es necesario usar el subjuntivo? There are three basic criteria that have to be present in order for us to be able to use the subjunctive in Spanish. If any of these three pieces are missing, are not there, then we have to use the indicative. So what are they? First off, there has to be a dependent clause. There has to be a K clause. In that K clause, there must be a change in subject between the independent and the dependent clause. And finally, we have to use a verb that fits into a category that I will be presenting to you as you weirdo. Those are the situations to use a subjunctive. And they have to be in that independent clause. So it looks like we have the main clause with the you weirdo, K, and then our dependent clause that has a change in subject. For example, es importante que aprendan el subjuntivo. ¿Cómo se forma el subjuntivo? Subjunctive is formed a little bit differently than the indicative mood. We take the yo form of the present indicative, we drop the O ending, and then we'll replace it with the corresponding subjunctive ending. I like to call it the opposite ending. This might look familiar to you. It's the same thing that we had to do when we were forming the negative to commands and the formal commands. So we have hablar, go to the yo form hablo, take off the O, que hable. We have comer, go to como, take off the O, que coma. Escribir, escribo, take off the O, que escriba. And here are our present subjunctive endings. Our AR verbs, we have es, amos, es, en. And our ER and IR verbs, we have as, amos, ais, an. There are some verbs that are irregular in that present indicative yo form. When verbs are irregular in that yo form, then there is that same irregularity in all forms of the present subjunctive. And here are some examples. So we have conducir, que conduzca. Conocer, que conozca. Decir, que diga. Hacer, que haga. Ofrecer, que ofrezca. Oír, que oiga. Parecer, que parezca. Poner, que ponga. Tener, que tenga. Traducir, que traduzca. Traer, que traiga. Venir, que venga. Y ver, que vea. And again, that same irregularity will be in all forms. Vea, veas, vea, veamos, veáis, vean, for example. We need to talk about our car-gar-zar ending verbs. We need to maintain that sound that at the car-gar-zar. So there has to be a spelling change in all forms of the present subjunctive. So, for example, sacar, que saque. We have jugar, que juegue. Almorzar, que almuerce. Now notice with almorzar and jugar, the nosotros and vosotros forms are different. They don't have that stem change because, for the reasons we're going to talk about just next, because they are stem changing verbs. And when they are an AR or ER stem changing verb, that same stem change happens in the present subjunctive as it does in the present indicative. So another couple more examples. So with pensar, you can see piense, pienses, piense, pensemos, penséis, piensen. Mostrar, muestre, muestres, muestre, mostremos, mostréis, muestren. Couple of ER verbs, entienda, entiendas, entienda, entendamos, entendáis, entiendan. And finally, volver, vuelva, vuelvas, vuelva, volvamos, volváis, vuelvan. Again, notice the nosotros and vosotros, they have the same stem change in the present indicative, meaning they go back to what is the stem. IR stem changes are different. IR stem changing verbs have the same stem change in the subjunctive as they do in the present indicative, but the nosotros and vosotros forms also have a stem change. So if there's this changes in E, the unstressed E changes to an I, and if it's an O, then the unstressed O changes to a U in the nosotros and vosotros form. So pedir, que pida, que pidas, que pida, que pidamos, que pidáis, que pidan. That one, it didn't really affect it because it stayed the same. However, with a verb like sentir, que sienta, sientas, que sienta, que sientamos, que sientáis, que sientan. Or a verb like dormir, que duerma, que duermas, que duerma, que durmamos, que durmáis, que duerman. We do need to look at some irregular verbs. There are 5 verbs that are irregular in subjunctive, meaning they don't follow that, go to the yo form in the present indicative, etc. They don't follow that pattern. Here they are. They're dar, to give, and there are the forms. De, des, de, demos, des, den. Estar, to be. Este, estés, este. Estemos, estéis, estén. Ir, to go. Vaya, vayas, vaya. Vayamos, vayáis, vayan. Saber, to know. Sepa, sepas, sepa. Sepamos, sepáis, sepan. And ser, to be. Sea, seas, sea. Seamos, seáis, sean. And please note also that the subjunctive form of I is irregular. So if you want to say there is, there are, and you need to use a subjunctive, it is aya. Here are some of the general uses of the subjunctive. This is that you weirdo, and I will talk more about this, especially in the next few vodcasts. But when do we use the subjunctive? When our independent clause shows or expresses uncertainty, wishes or wants, emotions, impersonal expressions, requests or recommendations, doubts, or opinions. So when that's subject 1, our independent clause, it is in the indicative, and it should have one of the you weirdos. Then we have our K. Then we have the subject 2, which needs a change from subject number 1 in the independent clause. And it should be the person or thing in our you weirdo. I forgot to use in those. So it's you weirdo world. Here are some common expressions that we'll start with in order to start getting familiar and comfortable using the subjunctive. These are impersonal expressions that will always require the subjunctive after the K. So es bueno que, es mejor que, es malo que, es importante que, es necesario que, es urgente que. So some examples for you. Es importante que los estudiantes estudien el subjuntivo. Es bueno que aprendamos nuevas formas y es necesario que usemos el subjuntivo correctamente. This is the end of the vodcast. Please work on the Google Forms document that you'll find underneath this vodcast. Gracias y hasta mañana.